Welcome back. I think we should probably get started again. Our second presenter this evening is Megan Bonenfant. After more than a decade in the provincial and municipal government sectors, Megan Bonenfant has joined the Nature Conservancy of Canada team in Midwestern Ontario as a conservation biologist, covering the Manitoulin Island archipelago and the Saugeen-Bruce Peninsula natural areas. Megan has a soft spot for Massasaugas and is quickly developing an orchid obsession in her new role. She lives in the woods on Manitoulin Island and spends her free time hiking, homesteading, and reading murder mysteries. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, thank you. Bear with me while I share here. Okay, do you see the main slide? Excellent. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak this evening. It's certainly an honor to be at the Orchid Festival. This is very well renowned in Ontario, so I'm quite excited to be here. Thanks to all of you for joining. Audrey, you are certainly a tough act to follow. I loved your presentation and I share your love of monarchs, as you'll see. I also appreciate the shout out for NCC, so thank you. As Alex said, my name's Megan and I'm a conservation biologist with the Nature Conservancy of Canada. I joined NCC in February to help coordinate stewardship in the Manitoulin Island archipelago and Saugeen-Bruce Peninsula natural areas, which includes the Vidal Bay property, which I'll be showing with you tonight. It's pretty hard to imagine a more exciting or important time to join NCC. I live here on Manitoulin Island, and to be part of creating and stewarding this incredible protected area complex right here at home is, frankly, it's a dream come true. As I said, I'm speaking to you tonight from Minidoo-Minising, also known as Manitoulin Island. It's the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples. I want to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples on this land, and with gratitude and respect, I acknowledge the significant and ongoing roles of Wigwamkong and Zeta Territory and the 6 member nations of the United Chiefs and Councils of Minidoo-Minising: Ondeck Amikaning First Nation, Chiking First Nation, Shegawenda First Nation, Sheshagowaning First Nation, Whitefish River First Nation, and Sebastian First Nation. The Nature Conservancy of Canada, NCC, is Canada's leading private land conservation and registered charity. Since 1962, NCC and its partners have helped to protect more than 14 million hectares, that's 35 million acres, coast to coast to coast. Protecting nature for the future is one of the most tangible ways we can address the climate crisis, stop the loss of biodiversity, and ensure current and future generations can count nature as part of their everyday lives. NCC conserves nature in perpetuity through donations of land, purchase, and conservation easements by leveraging private philanthropy and applying for funding whenever possible through a variety of sources. We're in the forever business, meaning we acquire properties and steward them for the long term. We don't just acquire a property, add it to an asset list, and move on. We actively manage our properties for ecological conservation forever. Before we get to Vidal Bay, I want to talk a little bit about planning. I know the word planning probably made most of your eyes glaze over, but bear with me, I promise it's cool. It's our planning, our budgeting, our monitoring, and our reporting which make this for everything possible. We plan at 3 different scales: the ecoregion, the natural area, and then the property scale. These 3 different scales of plans complement and talk to each other, with work on the ground at the property level, feeding back up to reporting at our ecoregion goals. Through our ecoregional planning process, we identified close to 100 natural areas across the country that are critical for the protection of Canada's habitats and species. Our goal is to advance conservation within these natural areas. Each of these dark green areas on the map are natural areas for which we have a plan. Our plans are flexible.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think something is going on with your screen sharing and it's cutting off a lot of it. Can you try unsharing and then sharing again and hope that that fixes it?
Yeah. How's that?
Perfect. It's working perfectly now. Okay, we're good.
That explains the weird box I was seeing. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so each of the dark green shaded sections are a natural area across the country, and we have natural area conservation plans for each of them. The plans aren't rigid, they're flexible, so we can respond to opportunities as they arise and new information as we this also means that our plans don't gather dust on a shelf. They barely make it to the shelf because we're referencing them each and every day. I mean, is there anything worse than spending all your time developing a plan that just sits on a shelf? I'm very happy we don't do that. So here in Ontario, we have several natural areas. They're shown here in a lighter shaded green. Most of you, I'm presuming, are down here in our Saugeen Bruce Peninsula natural area, which I cover, as well as the Manitoulin Island archipelago, which is right here. Manitoulin is the largest freshwater island in the world, and even though it is quite far north in Ontario, many of the plant communities and species which occur here have a strong southern feel to them. When compared to the Canadian Shield to the north, Manitoulin Island supports deeper soils on limestone bedrock, and it's home to really unique groups of plants and animals. Zooming in a bit more on the natural area, this is an example of the detailed analysis we do to try and understand where our work can make the most difference and be the most strategic. Where can we be most effective in our conservation work, whether it's direct protection of lands or supporting our partners and communities in their efforts. As I mentioned, our process, our planning process, our plans, they're all dynamic. We're still subject to opportunities and willing landowners who want to work with us. So we're always open to adjusting our plans and shifting our priorities as we get new information. Water is a critical consideration in the Manitoulin Island archipelago and beyond, but fairly obviously in this particular natural area, considering it's all islands, water is really important. This is an area of spectacular coastlines, wild inland lakes, streams, important wetlands. Protecting and, where necessary, restoring these habitats is the best way to maintain and improve water quality for people to drink, work, and plant. Fishing and angling related tourism are a large part of the local economy here, as well as the identity. I will admit to being a little bit of an outsider because I don't fish. Pretty much everyone else here does. Protecting these areas is also important for mitigating the impacts of flooding and drought, two things we are going to be contending with more and more as our climate changes. Not only is clean, abundant water important for people, it is also essential for many plants, birds, and animals that depend on it to survive and raise their young. And of course, this comes full full circle back to us, as so many of us get so much pleasure from being able to see these cool animals in their natural habitats. Every little bit of land we conserve contributes, but opportunities to protect large, contiguous tracts of land are pretty unusual, even this far north in Ontario. Large landscapes allow animals to move freely throughout their life cycles, and this is becoming increasingly important with climate change, as food sources, denning sites, and the timing of bird and insect migrations changes. We're working hard to make sure birds like this handsome black-burny warbler have safe places to refuel and nest when they arrive here during spring migration. Protecting large blocks maintains corridors, which can continue to support important ecosystem processes and spectacular wildlife like black bears and wolves. Vidal Bay is a conservation opportunity over 20 years in the making. Can you tell I'm a little bit excited about it? Long before I started working for NCC, our colleagues and partners knew that the lands that make up Vidal Bay, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother of Minising Provincial Park, I'm going to call it QEQMM from now on because it's a mouthful, and Cobourg Island and other lands in Western Manitoulin were globally significant, support some of the best remaining examples of globally rare alvar in North America, and provide critical habitat for at-risk species. Now, I know there was a presentation last night on alvars, but if you missed it and are wondering what an alvar is, they are globally rare ecosystems characterized by thin or no soil over limestone or dolostone bedrock, with varying amounts of trees, shrubs, and grasses, depending on the soil. The species that grow on alvars must be hardy as they face periods of flooding and drought throughout the year, and the community can reach temperatures of 52 degrees Celsius on the ground. If you've ever stood in an alvar in July, you know what I'm talking about. These harsh conditions keep alvars open, and as a result, they're home to many globally rare and at-risk species that have adapted to life in these new habitats. More than 60% of all the world's alvars are here in Ontario, and some of the best examples on Manitoulin are at Vidal Bay. The QEQMM Provincial Park, just south of Vidal Bay, was protected in the 90s by NCC working in partnership with Ontario Parks. Following that, NCC had the opportunity to start protecting lands on Cobourg Island to the west of Manitoulin in 2012. Since then, with the help of our supporters, we've been able to protect over 62% of Cobourg Island, which is more than 10,700 hectares, or all the green land you can see if you're more visual as opposed to numbers like me. NCC lands on Cobourg now represent one of the largest protected intact hardwood forests in Southern Ontario and provide habitat for bald eagles, colorful warblers like the Cape May, and unique plants like Houghton's goldenrod. Cobourg Island represented a unique opportunity to preserve the function of a large-scale and diverse ecosystem while allowing natural processes to occur uninhibited. Little did we know then, well, I didn't know then, I wasn't around, but little did NCC know then, all of their work up to that point, including the work on Cobourg Island, would lead to an incredible opportunity to purchase massive property at the western edge of Manitoulin Island, Vidal Bay. This project is setting a new standard for large landscape scale conservation in Ontario. It's redefining the vision of wildlife corridors in our province and creating a shore-to-shore, continuous stretch of wilderness that will help combat the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. Vidal Bay Forest and Shoreline is a 7,600 hectare, 18,800 acres, featuring coastal cliffs along the edge of the Niagara Escarpment. It has over 18 kilometers of undeveloped Lake Huron shoreline, pristine inland lakes and wetlands, and intact forests and alvars. When combined with the nearby conservation lands on Coburn Island and QEQMM Provincial Park, this becomes a protected area complex of 250 square kilometers, or over 24,000 hectares. The complex conserves an astonishing 86 kilometers of Great Lakes shoreline, which, for context, not competition, is more than twice what's currently protected at Bruce Peninsula National Park. Similar to other rural and cottage country regions of the province, the COVID pandemic drove an influx of new residents to Manitoulin, residents with a newfound appreciation for opportunities to experience nature. Manitoulin has always been a priority for conservation for its importance for biodiversity, but with more and more humans discovering the island's quiet beaches, tranquil forests, soaring cliffs, and clear water, its conservation priority has only been reaffirmed for its importance to people too. Vidal Bay's alvars, forests, wetlands, and grasslands provide essential ecosystem services for Ontario, Canada, and the world. These services include carbon storage, removal of air pollution, and floodwater storage. The carbon storage and sequestration benefits of the property are important in our collective efforts to reduce greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere. The estimated amount of carbon stored at Vidal Bay is close to 9 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and the annual estimated sequestration is almost 23,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's not insignificant. Property is also particularly critical for water quality and quantity on the island. The protection of intact shoreline of this need to work at in order to combat climate change. Hopefully you can all still hear me. I just got a little blurb that my internet connection is unstable. One of the downfalls.
For a second, but we're back now.
I love living in the woods on Manitoulin, but the internet is not the best. I suspect it's probably similar to the peninsula. In addition to Vidal Bay's biological significance, it also holds importance for the local communities that have cared about this landscape for generations. We're excited to work together, as we have on Coburn, with local communities and the 7 local First Nations to learn how we can best steward this property forever from those who have always cared for this place. Like I said, we're in the forever business. And securing the Vidal Bay property is really just the beginning. Stewardship, managing the land for the long term, is really the heart of what we do. Stewardship for us includes activities like restoring habitats, monitoring for species at risk, removing invasive species, building trails, installing signage. Each and every property we protect is monitored and managed so that ecosystems are maintained and species thrive. But how do we determine what actions are appropriate or that we should take on a particular property? It's a great question. We, of course, make a plan. We collect as much data as we can about a property in what we call a baseline inventory. Prior to field season, we collect information from existing databases and publications, as well as local knowledge about a property's past and current use. Things like habitat types, known species, trails, structures, and events like wildfires. Then we head on site to ground truth what we've learned and add to that knowledge. This is why my job is the best job in the world. I get to spend a great deal of time surveying Vidal Bay, verifying what we think we know, and discovering cool new stuff. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to learn more about this land's story. I'm most excited to learn from local First Nations and communities about the historical and traditional uses of this property and the past stewardship of the property as well. It has been taken care of for a very long time. I have been having a ton of great conversations with locals about their memories of the property and what they value about it. At NCC, we recognize that we have conservation expertise through a very specific lens, but there are more ways of knowing, and we have much more to learn. Now, I could literally spend years inventorying this incredible property and still not find everything. So that's not really our goal. We collect as much knowledge as we can this year, and then we'll use that to inform the development of a property management plan, that third scale of planning that I mentioned at the beginning. We update our property management plans every 5 years. So as we gain new knowledge by spending more time on the property, or as new folks come forward to share their stories with us, we can update our plans with that information. So I'll capture as much knowledge as I can this year and use it to inform the development of our first property management plan. The details of developing a property management plan are a little bit dry, so I won't take you that far down the planning rabbit hole. But in essence, we take everything we've learned about a property through the inventory. We set conservation goals for the property. Remember, linking back to our natural area conservation goals. And we figure out what actions we can implement on the ground to help achieve those goals. Our property management plan goals, like I said, are consistent with our natural area conservation plan, and that in turn helps inform our eco-regional plans, which we call conservation blueprints. Annual monitoring is a crucial component of every property management plan, and we adapt our actions as necessary based on the results of their monitoring and any new knowledge we gain along the way. So given that we're a little ways into the inventory process, it is July, what might Vidal Bay's management plan look like? I can't tell you for sure because the process is in the early stages, but based on what we know already, we can make some broad generalizations about what it might look like. We know that there is Phragmites present along the shoreline, which is unfortunate but not unexpected. So our plan will certainly include controlling invasive species and monitoring for any new incursions. Phragmites, if you don't know, is considered Canada's worst invasive species. It's certainly making an impact on the peninsula. It's very tall grass. It grows very densely. It outcompetes native vegetation and impedes wildlife movement. Down in Long Point, folks have gotten lost in it. It's a very scary thing for our natural environment. The good news is we've already got a really keen group of volunteers willing to help with Phragmites at Vidal Bay, which is fantastic. We also know of some populations of species at risk on the property, so monitoring for these populations is a given for the plan. Of course, we have monarchs, lots and lots of them, which is fantastic. Lakeside daisy, which is that cheerful yellow plant you're probably all familiar with. Here, it is also known as Manitoulin gold. Lakeside daisy is at the northern limit of its range here on Manitoulin, and 95% of all the lakeside daisy in the world occurs here in Ontario, and a good chunk of that is here on Manitoulin. We've also found Blanding's turtle, like this little guy, eastern wood pewee, purple stem cliffbrake. There are historical records of mottled dusky wing. reports of the West Virginia white, and more. Species at risk will always be something that we can focus on at Vidal Bay. Facilitating scientific research is also a possibility. The beautifully intact alvars I mentioned are supporting lots of really interesting species, many of which are like lakeside daisy at the northern limit of their range here. As species adapt to our changing climate, Manitoulin might have an important refuge role to play, and having intact ecosystems here to monitor those changes in is pretty exciting. The shore-to-shore nature of the protected area is also an excellent opportunity for studying wildlife movement across the island, especially for some of our larger mammal species. Recreational uses, of course, will also be in the plan. We're currently mapping the existing extensive trail system, which will offer hiking opportunities of varying length and terrain difficulty. Other activities like bird watching, botanizing, swimming, paddling, forest bathing, stargazing will all have a potential place here. And I can't talk about stewardship without talking about people. We rely heavily on our local partners to work with us at every step, from collecting baseline inventory data, sharing their stories with us, and getting into the mud with us to help eradicate invasive species. Through our planning process, we'll work and continue to work with local communities and First Nations to figure out uses for the property that are compatible for both people and conservation. This might involve things like shifting uses away from sensitive habitats, but like moving trails, for example. But in order to care for the land, people have to feel connected to it. And the only way to feel connected to it is to spend time in it. Getting people out there, fostering their own love for nature, whatever that means to them, and rediscovering their place in it can only strengthen whatever conservation successes we might achieve at Vidal Bay. As a fun example of collaboration, we recently, just last weekend, ran a bio blitz on the property with members of the Manitoulin Nature Club, Friends of Missouri Bay Provincial Park, and the Sudbury Field Naturalists. Those three groups have really sort of joined forces through the pandemic to offer talks and presentations for their membership. So it was and they've been incredibly supportive of our work. So it was just a nice opportunity to use them mercilessly for their skills. The collective expertise of these groups is mind-blowing, and having that expertise out on the landscape was a really great experience. I definitely had some naturalist hero worshiping moments over the course of the weekend. We're still processing the data, so I can't tell you how many different species we found over the course of the 3 days, and it was very laid back and informal. But I can say that we saw lots of monarchs, a good variety of birds and plants. There were snakes and snails and turtles, frogs, butterflies, moths, odonates. Ferns, of course. This maidenhair, spleenwort, and purple stem cliffbrake were sharing a grike, which was fun, not uncommon. And of course, the golden rule of presenting, know thy audience, an orchid. One team reported this lesser purple fringed orchid. Prior to the blitz, we've seen spotted and striped coral root, Alaska orchid, yellow lady slipper, rattlesnake plantain, and helberine. I never know how to pronounce it, so I always say it twice. And according to Morton and Venn, which is my Manitoulin Flora Bible, we are on the lookout for calypso, early coral root, ram's head, pink lady slipper, slender lady's tresses, hooded lady's tresses, round leaf orchid, blunt leaf, rain orchid, northern green orchid, and a bunch of tway blades. So I get to feed my newfound addiction while out on the property. None of what I have talked about tonight would have been possible without supporters from every walk of life, generously sharing their time, their passion, their connections, and their donations for the benefit of nature for all of us. In less than a year, we raised more than 90% of the 16 million project cost for Vidal Bay. Less than a year, almost $16 million. Excuse me. That's staggering. That's how deeply the people of this country care for nature. I keep that thought with me every day while I'm out there living my dream. It drives me and it honestly gives me hope. As much as I'm working for Blanding's turtles and monarchs and ruffed grouse and wolves and orchids, I'm working for the people who love them as much as I do. And I can't wait to see what we can accomplish together next. Today it's Vidal Bay. Stay tuned to NCC for more exciting things with larger landscapes in the future. I think I talked a little fast because I'm coming in at 30 minutes. If that's all right, leaves more time for questions. I really appreciate you coming tonight and for listening. If you'd like to learn more about NCC, any of our work or the Vidal Bay project in particular, you can follow this link to our website or drop me a line anytime. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have for me.
Okay, so sorry, I'm just reading the question we have in here so far. So they've been barbecuing while listening to your presentation. So they just weren't sure if they missed this. So how does a visitor best explore the Vidal Bay property?
Oh, great question. So come to Manitoulin, first and foremost. There is a map on the website. You can email me for more specific directions if you like. We don't have our permanent main signage out yet, but we do have small permitted uses NCC signs. So they're 1 foot by 2 feet. So you can know that you're on NCC property. There is parking available at some obvious access points, which again, I can share more details with you if you would like. And right now it is pedestrian access only. So you park at the access point and hike in. I was on Sunday during the Bio Blitz. I went with a, I won't use their name, so they hopefully won't mind me giving their age. An 82-year-old fellow naturalist and I walked 3 kilometers into the shoreline and back. And we had a lovely day.
So we don't have any other questions so far. So again, just like the last presentation, feel free to ask anything that's on your mind. And it's so nice to see such like a massive property that's being protected there.
It's fantastic, and words really can't describe it. You can't really appreciate the scale of the property until you're there. It's pretty incredible.
And is it open to the public or?
Yes. Yeah. Most of our properties are open to the public. They're not necessarily advertised or promoted, but they are open to the public generally for pedestrian access. So, you know, park on the road or at the parking area at the access point and walk in.
And,
some of our properties, sorry, go ahead.
Keep going.
Some of our properties have established trail systems, some don't. So the ones with trails typically have a parking area of some sort, and signage that makes it obvious as to where the trail is for you to enjoy.
And I assume there's like specific rules for places that don't have trails, or?
Nothing over and above, you know, no cutting, no campfires, pack in, pack out, no camping, that sort of thing.
Okay. And
they're just harder to explore.
And someone asked who owned the property previously before it was bought?
I don't recall the name of the company. It was previously owned by a timber company, and before that, that company purchased it in the 80s. Before that, it was owned by Ontario Paper. So there is past logging on the property, which we still see evidence of. There is still evidence of a historical forest fire in some areas. There is an old ranger station that burned down, but it's still there. We also inherited 3 meteorological test towers on the property, so we're looking at ways we might be able to use those to support some climate research, for example.
Cool. And in relation to like the trails on some of the areas, how was like the treadways, like easy or challenging, and like how are the slopes on these trails?
Great question. So there are so far there are 3 trails that are very easily accessed. They are essentially roads. So they make for a really great hike. The terrain is even, gently sloping. One of them has a little bit of a hill at the beginning, maybe a 30% grade for a short period to get up onto the escarpment and then back down. But for the most part, there are opportunities for a gentle hike and opportunities for a more vigorous workout.
So whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And how far is it from the South Baymouth ferry terminal?
About an hour. If you are heading out that way, if you're not familiar with Manitoulin Island, just check locations of gas stations before you head out, just to make sure you have enough.
Okay, I like this question from an anonymous attendee. What is next on your horizon?
Next?
Yes.
More Vidal Bay. So I talked about Vidal Bay tonight, obviously, because that was the intent of the presentation, but on the Sauget and Bruce Peninsula, we also have a number of properties that are likely more local to a lot of the folks on the call tonight. Excellent opportunities for exploring. And I am really enjoying getting to know those properties as well, while also figuring out Vidal Bay. Cape Herd and Shining Rainbow Deer are 2 properties up near the national park that are fantastic. We also, at the same time that we were working on Vidal Bay, we secured a 400-acre property in the Cape Chin area, which we're calling Britton Lake. It's not actually, it doesn't have frontage on Britton Lake, but it's immediately adjacent to it. It's also adjacent to some Bruce Trail Conservancy property. So pretty excited about getting to know that property too. Only in the context of Vidal Bay would 400 acres in Cape Chin become a footnote. It's going to get its love.
I guess that's almost a good thing then, or a good thing though, that it's a small part just because of how big that piece of land is.
Yes.
And who is the contact, or where would people find further information about Vidal Bay?
So you can go to our website. We have a project sheet there that gives a lot of information, including contacts for some different departments within NCC. But if you have property-specific questions, by all means, reach out to myself or our program director, Esme Batten, is also always happy to chat.
And just to clarify, what is the website again?
I'll put it in the chat here.
Perfect. We'll give it another minute in case anyone else has a question, but right now there's nothing left so far.
And I'll put the direct link as well to the Vidal Bay project page. Maybe. Man, I'm having a lot of trouble with technology today. Thank you all for bearing with me.
You can work on that. I think don't think there's any more questions. So thanks again for your talk, Megan, and I'll pass it back over to Alex to wrap everything back up.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so thank you so much to Audrey and Megan for your presentations this evening. Thank you for sharing your expertise and enthusiasm for your work with us. This concludes our presentations. I'd like to thank Heather Keast and Jane Greenhouse for working with the Friends of the Bruce District Parks Association to bring this event together, and to thank Sean, Maddie, and especially Zach tonight from Parks Canada for their support. I'd also like to thank everyone here for spending your first night of Stage 3 in Ontario with us. It is great to see so many people watching. We hope to see you again tomorrow evening, same time, same Zoom link, for Peter Raspberry's presentation on technical tips for successful and ethical wildflower photography, and Park Canada staff's virtual guided hike showcasing the many pollinators of orchids and how to become a citizen scientist using the iNaturalist app. I will leave the Owen Soundfield Naturalist Society information up for a couple more minutes in case anyone missed it during the break. Stay safe and have a great evening.